All right. Welcome, everyone. Come on in, take a seat. Welcome, welcome. We've got a great session queued up today. Come on in. Just before we get going, my name is Brent Hodgins, one of the directors here at Mirren. Quick heads up, but some of the webinars we have coming up over the next couple of weeks, we've got a few really good ones. On Tuesday of next week, we've got a session, Run Client Meetings That Crush It. We've got a guest speaker, Tim Leake. He's done a few sessions with us before. He's going to be looking at how to orchestrate client meetings that are far more on point, efficient, that actually get the client engaged. If you're a client-facing team member, pitch team member, you'll want to check out that session. Thursday, we've got one on day-to-day negotiation skills. We have Francisco joining us for that one. He's a procurement and negotiation strategist. He actually wrote the procurement and negotiation agency guidelines for the 4As. That's coming up next Thursday. February 10th, I'm going to be doing a session on fast tracking AI adoption. So how to look at your client project workflow and how to very quickly, more quickly, start to integrate AI into that workflow. Those are all coming up. You can see them at mirren.com/webinars, mirren.com/webinars. You can check out what we have coming up. All right. With that, today's webinar, we're going to be looking at the role of AI within the complex world of ad operations and where ad ops can really benefit from AI. We'll address how to think about your tech, what you need, how to make your selection, and more good insight into incorporating AI into your workflows. Joining us, our guest speaker, we have Eric Mayhew. He's the president and chief product officer of Fluency. Fluency is a digital AI-powered platform for managing complex media portfolios. He's a seasoned business strategist, product development strategist, ad tech and AI strategist. He's an engineer. Really amazing guy. Very lucky to have him today. He now runs Fluency. Uh, and prior to that, he actually developed a key digital marketing platform for the automotive category, a major innovation for that space that has had more than $1 billion in spend moving through it. He's often featured in Adweek, Ad Age, all kinds of podcasts. Again, really pleased to have Eric with us today as we go into the world of tech and ad ops and AI. Eric, really excited to have you with us today. The stage is yours, sir. I'll come back at the end to help with Q&A, but let's have a look at some tech.
Thank you, Brent, and thank you everyone for joining. You guys can all hear me okay? Everything good? Perfect. Awesome. Today's not going to be a session directly about AI tools, although we are going to get into different AI tools. It's really a session about planning and specifically about how to think about AI in ad operations in a way that actually holds up once you try to use it every single day. We're going to talk about what to use, where to use it, and honestly, the most important part, how to deploy it responsibly without creating more work, more risk, or more fragmentation in your business. AI is definitely already here. The real question is whether it's actually helping us or if it's done wrong, is it quietly making things harder for us? Let's see if I can move through this. Brent kind of gave me a quick intro. Hello, everybody. For those of you that I haven't met, my name is Eric Mayhew. I'm the president and chief product officer here at Fluency, and I'm one of the founders. Brent kind of referenced back to previous company and the $1 billion of ad spend. It's actually really fun to be on this next journey. This next journey, we do all of that. We do that times 3 every year. Right now, we're about $3 billion under management right now in the current platform. It's nice to have a second pass with all the learnings you have with the first pass. My background is in software development with a little bit longer than I'd like to admit career in building ad ops technical solutions. My day-to-day sits at this intersection of ad operations, product development, and scalability. I spend a lot of my time seeing what works, but really probably even more time seeing what breaks. especially when systems aren't really designed with the reality and the practicality of our job in mind. So my bias today is pretty simple. I care about systems that will survive contact with the real world. I would assume that everybody today has actually interacted with a chatbot at this point. They're really pervasive, they're extremely impressive, they're useful, and honestly, they've set a pretty high bar for what people will expect from AI. It looks like magic, but chat is really just the floor. It does look like magic, and there's a lot more that we can pull from it. Chatbots answer questions. They don't really operate systems, and that's kind of what the job is. In ad operations, answers without action don't really move the needle. So what we're going to do today is we're going to explore how we move beyond the chatbot, from conversational AI, systems that we've all seen and practiced with, to systems that can actually participate in our workflows. I debated how deep to go with this. I don't want to lose anybody by being a nerd in the beginning. I thought this was the right way to frame it. I just wanted to talk about what's out there. We'll get a little bit into how the flow works, and that might just anchor us as we talk about the practical use cases. We'll get past these next 4 slides pretty quickly. They'll let us talk about, what's out there. There are ubiquitous LLMs out there. So LLM, large language model, that's kind of the thing that we've been working with chat bots. We'll frame this with what works and what doesn't, and we're really gonna see overall. You're probably all familiar with these different LLMs. If not, there might be a couple new ones in here. And when people talk about AI and they talk about their favorite LLM, they talk about it as if there's a single best one, and there really isn't. Every major model kind of optimizes for different trade-offs. You'll see different context windows, you'll see different reasoning, tone, governance. And that means that what we're really going to take away from this is that there isn't a model that just wins. There's model choices that we need to do based on the job that's in front of us, and not really the other way around. We're not going to fit the job into the model. We'll fit the model. We'll choose the model based on the job. This kind of sets the framework of what I wanted to talk about, just to set the stage with the way the conversation works. I work in the API side a lot more than I work in the UI tools. And in the UI tools, they can look like there's this gigantic memory of everything that goes on, and that the chat window learns about you and knows all this stuff. But the reality is they're completely stateless, meaning that there is no memory and no history. Every time you interact with a chatbot, it has to replay all of the history as it reads through it. So you're going to see kind of the history 1, 2, 3 and prompt 10. So when you are asking today a question, it's going to read through the history of everything that you've said, everything it's responded with, and then your next question is going to answer based on that. So every interaction is essentially a fresh read. The model will reread that entire context it's given, it predicts the next token, and then forgets everything again. That forget and repeat loop is the default behavior. So if people think that AI forgot, what they really mean is that the context window is incomplete, or that they haven't actually it doesn't have the right context for the question that's at hand. This is just kind of a restatement of this, but when we go through this, the diagram says that this is the intention. This is that forget and repeat loop that we see all the time in the way a prompting works. There's a finite context window, and it's really important to understand that. Those different models all have different context windows, and that really means how much text, how much history can you actually give any of the chat LLMs. So the context window is finite, and if something falls out of it, for example, if you've had a long conversation, you might start to see the responses degrade. They might forget things, your account rules or your historical performance constraints. They'll stop being in the memory, and they'll stop being part of the evaluation for the next statement. So that's why software around the model matters so much. Managing that context is kind of the art of domain-specific AI tools, and we'll get into that. So making sure that we have the right context window for every time we ask a question is really important. If it's not intentionally bundled, it ends up being gone. I'll just kind of give you an idea. Text is pretty easy to retain in that context window. So chat conversations are relatively easy. But when we start to work with larger data sets, daily performance metrics that we need to go in and analyze, that can fill up the context window relatively quickly. So let's talk about the next evolution. So that's conversation. The piece that we're at right now is this part called agentic operations. And this really started with something called function calling or tool use. And you'll see that over here. When we have a conversation with an AI LLM and we provide it software that it can work with, let's just set the stage for just a second. No chatbot knows your advertising performance today. It doesn't know your rules. It doesn't know anything about your account. It doesn't know its sensitivities unless you give it to it. So you need to give it in context. Knowing that the context window is finite and that you can run out of context, making sure the right things in context for the question are really important. So what we do is we provide these chat these chatbots, these LLMs, sets of tools to retrieve that context when they need it. So if you need something about governance rules and you provided a way to retrieve the governance rules in the tool, the systems can actually do that. And in an agentic workflow, what it does is the user asks a question, it's got all that context in it, and it's got access to operate your software a little bit. So, for example, if you want to retrieve some data, you let the tool have that option, and then it will invoke your software, retrieve data, and it will actually have a little conversation within itself. So you've asked a question, it's going to have a conversation within itself. It's going to augment its information, its context window, and then it's going to provide you a good answer. Sometimes that's called retrieval augmented generation. And the alternative to that with agentic operations is tool use and operating software. So if you want to think about it as we're going to actually make some changes in some campaigns, that's a pretty good way to take a look at that. So that's the difference between an agent and a conversation. We'll just kind of pause on that for just a second because that's going to dovetail into all the rest of the stuff that we're going to talk about. So why do we need operation? Now we're out of the nerdery. Sorry to get past that. I just wanted to anchor in that we are providing that context to the LLM. It has operations that it can retrieve its own data and then it needs to answer. This slide tends to resonate pretty quickly. Modern ad operations span sales and onboarding and planning and activation, optimization and reporting across more tools than anyone ever intended to manage manually. The work keeps getting bigger. The number of platforms exploded. Teams didn't scale at the same rate. So let's make this concrete. Take some campaign data and reporting. Most teams are pulling performance data from multiple platforms every day, normalizing it, checking for anomalies, and then explaining why something changed every day, every week, whatever. They're doing that routinely. AI can handle that first pass. It can summarize what changed, flag what's abnormal, and start drafting your narrative. Automation makes that repeatable across 1, 10, 50 accounts or campaigns on a schedule with the same rules running every time. So let's invoke that AI automation, that analysis, and make sure every single day or every single week I'm doing that analysis. And that's kind of how they dovetail together. So at some point, human coordination stops being enough, and that's not a failure. It's just simple scaled math. We just have a lot of systems and a lot of complexity. We have a lot of long tail features that we want to get to. So AI and automation, they really can work together, but they solve very different problems. AI is good at thinking, analysis, variation, human-like responses, and automation is really good at execution, scale, consistency, compliance, those kinds of things. If you try to scale AI without automation, you kind of get chaos. AI is non-deterministic, meaning you can ask the same question. You can go try this in a chat window right now. Ask the same question 3 different times. You will get 3 different answers. So you'll get some unpredictable results. So on the other hand, if you automate without AI, you end up with some kind of rigid rules and you'll miss scenarios and it will be as good as you anticipated and not have that human-like feel in it. So here's a simple example. If AI is reviewing yesterday's performance, like we talked about, and notices spend pacing is often a couple of our campaigns, and we have set up pre-approved mitigation rules. We've set up some things that we want to do when spend is off. We let AI interpret those issues and then invoke that automation, which will do a series of events that are very predictable, maybe lowering budgets or triggering alerts. And then that logs what it actually did. That automation is super predictable in how it functions. It's pre-approved. AI then can take the results of that execution and explain why the change was made and what to watch for next. So really alone, neither of these solves the problem, but together they do. AI decides what, and automation kind of handles the how. We're doing on time. Looks like we're pretty good. AI and automation do solve different problems. Oh, sorry, I didn't miss this one. Sorry. This is what it looks like when these two ideas come together. So this is a pretty big slide, and a lot of people love this slide. So take a little bit to take a look at this. And there are several disconnected tools. You've got central intelligence layer that connects all that data intake, activation, optimization, reporting, and that's the operating system, that concept that we think we need to pull together here to really make this orchestrated and work together. Think of it not as a plug-in strategy, but as a full-up operating system mindset. I'd love for us to think of this as a loop and not just a diagram. Like, this is data coming in all the time, performance, budgets, creative, inventory, whatever's coming in. It's coming in all the time. In this loop, AI is interpreting that context. We take that data in, we interpret what it means and what we have to do with it. This account is underperforming relative to last week and some seasonality effects. Like, it can do those kinds of analyses. And then automation executes that pre-approved response. It might update bids or notify the team, cue some creative changes, and then AI summarizes that outcomes for humans. And this loop is running continuously. So if we're trying to get into a scalable system, repeatable, we use AI to help us interpret, we use automation to help us execute, and let the automation run that loop continuously. So it's not really about replacing judgment, it's about making good judgment highly repeatable. Fragmentation is one of the most expensive problems in ad ops, and I think if we are self-reflective, we have some big Frankenstacks, things that we've kind of stitched together. Every time I go in and talk with somebody, I find yet another tool that's in the framework that I've never heard of before that somebody wants to integrate with. But there's just such a massive array of these different tools that we try to stitch together, and it does turn into a big fragmentation problem. So with every handoff, with every copy and paste, with every swivel chair workflow, we add risk and cost to our businesses. This is where centralizing that and orchestrating that through AI and automation is really, really helpful. We want to make sure that those systems can be connected and can be connected cleanly with a centralized orchestration and supervision layer. AI-powered automation reduces that friction by collapsing steps instead of adding tools. And if you think about that fragmentation in our own businesses today, it's this silent tax that we're all paying, and we're all paying it all the time. With AdOps transforming, there's a spot of where we are today. We're not starting from zero. We all have our manual workflows. Some of us have automated some workflows, and now we're trying to get into this intelligent assistant spot. Since we're not starting from zero, that's a good spot to start, but we're also probably not fully ready for fully agentic execution. There's a maturity curve here. When you move from manual work to automated workflows to intelligent assistants and eventually to agents, you don't just jump to agents. You earn them by building strong foundations first. I think everything that we've done so far sets us up for good workflows. I think a lot of us think about in terms of playbooks. Playbooks are an extremely important concept when we want to get into automation and human-like decisioning. Those governance rules that we all have in the space are super important. Brand safety guidelines that we've documented and orchestrated and made sure that everybody knows. It's the same concept with AI and automation as it is with bringing on a new employee. We want to make sure that they understand exactly what your clients expect and how do we keep them safe. So we talked a little bit about those generic tools, and they are powerful, and that's not in question. But what they don't understand is your account structures, your KPIs, your rules, and your compliance requirements, like we just spoke about. So all that framework and foundation that we've built over the last several years is extremely important as feeders into the next version of our space to get into the agentic space. They can't really do anything in your systems either. I mean, that's the other piece is if you've tried them, you've gone into Chat GPT or Gemini or Claude and you've asked it to do some things, it doesn't operate your APIs. It doesn't change your Google Ads campaigns. It doesn't optimize things. It doesn't set up your reporting and send it out to your clients. It doesn't do those types of functions. That's where we want this orchestration layer. We want to really do the hard work where we build upon those models, those extremely powerful models, to make them domain specific and make them domain aware. Powerful doesn't mean that they're appropriate, and generic AI just doesn't know your rules, and that can make it very difficult. So if you have teams out there trying to interact with chatbots, copying data from other sources and pasting it into the context window and asking arbitrary questions, there's great exploration there, but that's not a great way to get into a repeatable and scalable business mode. You have risk there, asking a question a strange way and taking the answers as they come without maybe some of your governance being brought into that context window or that falling off of the context window is extremely risky for your business to go do those things. And then you still have to go take what the outputs are, read the text, and then go manually key it in somewhere else. And that's relatively challenging for us to scale. Probably flying through this right now. So when AI and automation overlap, something important happens. Creative delivery improves, reporting becomes faster and more consistent, operation moves from reactive to proactive. We can get in front of those campaign optimizations faster. We can do reporting and analysis better than we have in the past. When you have good campaign optimization and great content, your creative delivery just works well. Insight meets execution. That's our leverage. An insight without action is just it's kind of trivia. It really just is information. It's great exploration. It's great for us to learn from, but it's not super practical for us to run our businesses with. I'd love to talk about some real use cases here, and I do have slides on it in the future. But if we look at some of the creative delivery components here, one of the things that is relatively common is that we have to generate lots of creative variations. One of the things that can go into a creative is, say, specials. I've worked with ad ops teams in the past where the job was originally we got a list of all the specials and we were to go into all the ad networks and instrument those specials in our ad copy content, remembering to take them down at the beginning of next month. It was a super tedious process. Eventually, those spreadsheets stopped coming in, and the ask was, "Can you just go get them off my website when my website updates?" And that became relatively tedious. We've worked on this process a little bit. It's one of the things I have personal direct experience with, where we can actually go and schedule automated website reviews to scan pages, to pull off that content, interpret the specials that are there, pre-configure all the same thing that you'd see in that spreadsheet, but actually pre-configure tools that can update those creatives automatically for you. Put a person in the middle, let them do the observation, review what the specials were that were coming out of that. If they approve that, they're happy with what specials they see, they hit approve, and then that goes and publishes those. Those time-based specials can come down when either the website takes them down, or if the special has a a period of performance on the website itself, it'll actually pre-configure that takedown automatically, which is pretty awesome. So that job that was very tedious and heavily dependent, very difficult to just automate, heavily dependent on interpretation and reading a website, is really beautifully done and well orchestrated when AI can read the website, interpret that data, configure the automation, and then let the automation run and do its thing. It's been one of the big wins that I've seen in this, just as an example that I think might be practical. I don't know if anybody else does special-based and time-based ads, but it's kind of an invasive thing for us to get through. So for key considerations, this is the moment for us to slow down and think. Tool choice matters less than our architecture. How do we get our context? How do we build our systems that we have access to the data that's important to get into that context? How do we build our rule systems and make sure that we have those automation frameworks in place that can invoke whichever tool it is safely and securely? Bad foundations, and I have seen it a few times, they scale pretty badly. They they get unwieldy to manage. They can do more damage faster than you can do manually. They're challenging. There's a phrase that I have listened for throughout my entire career, and it's a really amazing phrase to hear. If you've ever sat with an ad ops in an ad ops team area, which I spent most of my career there, even as a software developer, sitting in the ad ops area, is why can't it just do this for me? Like the phrase, why can't it just is the one that I really anchor in on. And whatever comes next after that phrase, the why can't it just, is usually pretty profound. It's in two ways. One, it's hyper practical and it's extremely valuable. This first one came out when I, I was sitting next to somebody, and at the time we had these product feeds. The product feeds were, I mean, they were automotive in nature. So here's your inventory, your vehicle inventory, and the statement was, why can't I just take this vehicle inventory and automate my campaign configurations? And that was kind of the spark that started a lot of what came next between both past life and this life, is finding ways that we can take those single sources of data and do the practical thing. The reality in ad ops is we work across a ton of accounts. Oftentimes, it's the only way to make the business profitable is to manage scale. Um, so we're dealing with a high volume of work, whether it be on locations or businesses or just complexity in products. We can be across accounts, and the pressure for speed and compliance is there, but not just those two things. We are asked all the time to get deeper and deeper into the long tail. Make sure we make no mistakes. Make sure we get into things like the depth of strong audience management, curation, negative keyword management, all of these things that have these long tail effects and really optimize our campaigns to reduce spend, all take labor and time currently. The teams don't really need more dashboards. They need more insights, and ultimately they need actions to come from those insights. It's a why can't it just moment. If you know that these are the insights, why can't you just take the corrective actions or help me take the corrective actions to get there? And this question isn't, it isn't insulting. It's just good, honest product feedback, and it's a great thing for anyone in the product space to listen for. And I ask everybody in the audience, take some time, and as you walk through your ad ops pod, listen for that phrase. I think you'll hear it more times than you can imagine. Why can't it just? Um, I've seen a lot of places where it feels like this ad ops job is like the supposition is it's easy. It's really not. It's extremely time consuming. It's extremely difficult to make sure we bookkeep everything. As we moved from traditional to digital, we have more buttons. I did a little study to see how many different settings there are in just one Google Ads campaign. And I mean one account, one campaign, one ad group, keyword, etc. Just one. And there are almost 1,100 unique settings that you can make. Not setting values, things that you can set. So to get any of those wrong, and they can be challenging, you have to manage and optimize all those things. They're just difficult. So help with that is going to be extremely welcomed, and automation being that help. So beyond the off-the-shelf AI, we've kind of hit on this point a couple of times. You may hear statements like you can just do this with ChatGPT, or you may be able to just do this with Claude or Gemini. And the reality is, at some level, that's kind of true. If you're willing to put together the framework to work around it and to govern those components. It's not all that different than saying, hey, why can't I just do it with software? When it comes to AI being a tool, AI will help you with that, and it's like supercharging your software. So you're going to have some part in that orchestration layer. When you bring this in, think of this as like a checklist, what to look for. You really want your AI to be embedded and secure. The very first thing that we did, when this is just a historical like experience story, we brought in ChatGPT and just tried to tinker with some things. And at that point in time, their terms and conditions did allow them to, if you on a non-paid or even on a paid service, they did allow them to train their models with it. And the very first demo I did, our client looked at it and said, you can't leak my data out to somebody else's training data. And that's really important to understand. And immediately that was pulled out, And we went down a path to think through how we could make this embedded and secure, making sure that there is no data egress, there is no training that's unintentional. Our clients own their data, not us, and we want to make sure that governance is clean. So look for that. You'll want to find something we've talked a lot about the context window and how valuable that is in setting up whatever the LLM is going to provide you. It can only answer based on what it knows. So we need contextual by design. It needs to understand where you are in your questioning, what account you're working with, what data is relevant to that account, what the governance rules are that you've pre-configured. It needs that context by design. It needs to be operationally aware and work with your current workflows. You've got those playbooks. You've got things that you want it to do. You've got things that you want to say, I allow you to work this way. And we want to make sure that it can scale your team. It can be repeatable, it can be replayable, and it's not just generating text. There's a little early days of working with this. I had reports being generated daily, and it was just a flood of more information. If we're really in the game of trying to make sure that things are more efficient and more effective, having just another long narrative to read didn't really help anybody else out. So that's one of those places that we've gone down a path and we have learned what doesn't work. It is important that we move beyond just text generation and report creation that is heavy to read when there are actionable things that we could be doing inside there. And maybe most importantly, as we're looking for AI, it needs to sound like you and not the internet. Not some generic thing out in the space that anybody can get. You all run your own businesses with your own tone of voice. You have your own priorities and value systems and things that you believe in. It needs to feel like it's coming from you and not a cookie cutter solution. And that's what really makes it a teammate instead of just a novelty, is when we can make it feel like we are scaling ourselves, we are supercharging our voice, our way, and with our approach. It might help us form those approaches, but it'll always be something that we agree to. So think in terms of that. What's happening right now in the space? We've all worked with the chat stuff. We've all seen some version maybe of retrieval augmented generation. We are getting to the point of real digital workforce type things where AI agents are operating in campaign execution. They are campaign managers, they are optimization specialists, and they can help us with our reporting and insight roles. Like, I think if you look at the job, we spend a portion of our time optimizing our campaigns, say 50% of our time optimizing campaigns. We can work with that. But the other 50% of the time, we're really justifying what we did. We're articulating back to our clients what we did, what value it provided, gaining insights of what we might do next, being consultative. And that's the other side that we can really get some assistance here with our AI agents and friends that are there. So we'll just take a couple of examples here. Like, let's say we take that reporting specialist. That a reporting agent wouldn't just generate reports. It's important that it knows the account that you're on, the KPIs that matter to that account, the things they're sensitive to. Say they're in brand growth and not in lead generation. It needs to have that context so that the reporting is relevant to the audience. You would do that as a person. You want to make sure that your agent knows, or your agent knows how to do that. So it tries to work hard to match that client's expectations. It drafts a weekly summary, flags anomalies, and escalates anything that breaks the rules. It can work with generating notifications. It can work with generating suggestions and things to operate within your software platforms and your workflows that you can either just manually approve or auto approve as you go forward and run it down those automation workflows. It's pretty cool. Optimization agent, kind of dovetailing in that, the reporting agent would be primarily on the reporting side, but with an optimization agent, it would monitor performance daily, hourly, whatever you want it to do. It kind of doesn't sleep. I think we all know that. It will check that we're performing against our pacing goals, recommending changes, and preparing updates. Only executing them within guardrails that we've defined through our automation rules. Saying, hey, we're going to invoke this bid change, and we're going to do that. But we have a rule that says we're not going to change a bid by more than 10% in any one given step. Awesome. Doesn't really matter if the AI tries to do that. Our automation rules adds that governance layer and makes sure that we do exactly what we said we're going to do. And these agents have to behave like teammates with very clear job descriptions. And the goal isn't for replacement, it's for consistency, speed, and focus. These are meant to be force multipliers. That's what we're working towards. Trying to read, I think of, I use an analogy that my co-founders hate. I live in rural Vermont. I think of this an awful lot like if we had shovels and we were digging at one point. We use these agents like an excavator. We can do more with less time, but it's still going to do it the way that we want it to be done. It's cool. So let's talk about some current use cases, and I really do love this one. This is probably my favorite one. It's not theoretical. These things are happening now. Um, this is one from my personal experience with working with one of our clients. We worked on a reporting agent that could build PowerPoint decks. It's pretty cool. It builds a monthly performance review deck. But the next part is we wanted the agent to actually present the deck. That presentation of the deck is kind of an interesting challenge. You can build a deck all day long. That's just reporting. That's pretty simple. You can even make it kind of compelling using some AI componentry where you're telling a story that's more tailored to each individual account with biases towards things that they're sensitive. That's cool. But now we want to actually present that. And I think if you've ever presented a table of data to somebody, and let's just go with like a real simple one, your return on ad spend improved. It's awesome. Like that's the net benefit that we wanted out of all of our advertising. But our cost per click went up, or maybe our click-through rate went down. Something else, some ancillary metric that is kind of a component of that return on ad spend went a direction that we didn't that looks negative. Every one of the recipients are going to see that deck. They're going to see that table. And unfortunately, human nature draws our eyes to the negative. And then we have a question, and then we have a problem, and we think that there's a challenge here, and we see something negative. And as as good stewards of this data, we would tell the story. We would focus on the return on ad spend. We'd even say why it doesn't really matter if your click-through rate went down. We went up funnel. We were doing more branding. It's driven better return on ad spend just because we did that. That story was something that we would tell as people. And we could lose that potentially if we just delivered a flat deck. So with this is actually a narrated deck with storytelling built in. This delivers. We'll talk about repeatability and scalability. It's been delivering for almost a year now to about 3,000 locations, all with that narrative built in, curating the story, telling the story with the positive wins, letting people know what we've done, why we've done it. That's kind of an interesting thing to always articulate in a deck is the why and what it yielded for outcomes, all run by AI, powering an automation engine that builds these decks with some inputs from the AI interpretation layer, and then a text to speech and a text to video component that will build that into something that's really compelling for people to interpret and to see. This has been an incredible win, and I'm extremely proud of this one thing, and I think we can do more of these as we go forward. So in our key takeaways, I'm just going to go with a couple things. Just have a good index and inventory of your data and the structure of your data. If your data is messy, AI can help you clean it, but if you don't have AI clean it and you try to take action on it, AI can actually just help you be wrong faster. Start with some of the things that are actually like these low risk workflows. You've heard us talk a little bit about analysis and reporting, and it's not the end game by any stretch, but it is a good low risk spot for us to start. So reporting analysis are great first wins. I think you can dip your toe into the AI and the automation workspace through that. Before you try to depend on any of the intelligence of AI, make sure you define your rules. We have them in our workspace. We have them when we bring in new employees. We let them know what the rules are, the governance around how we execute our advertising. We want to make sure that that's ready and prepared so the agents have those guardrails before we give them any of the autonomy to go take action on our accounts. And then really think about the centralization before, during, and after you automate. The fragmentation piece is really challenging to correct for too far later. So fragmentation really kills your ability to leverage if you have systems that can't talk to each other and you have these big glaring holes in that story, in that workflow that you really want to orchestrate and automate. It can be really challenging. Look for open systems that talk with each other and an orchestration layer that kind of brings it all together. So if you remember these three things, remember this: structure your data, plan for AI operability, and prioritize based on the impact and risk. AI certainly rewards preparation. I may be a little ahead of schedule here, and I apologize if I am. So I just want to say thank you for today. AI operability is it's built, not just installed. So we would build these things together. You'll be building these things as we go forward. And this is a journey and not one that you just flip a switch. So I'm really happy if you all want to keep this conversation going. Brent, were there some questions while I was running my mouth?
I've just reminded people if you have questions, you can drop them into chat. Some people have sent them in directly to us. I'll read those in a moment. I just wanted to kick off the questions though. Is this is There's so much untapped opportunity to leverage tech, to leverage AI in this part of the business. To really, I love it. I made a note. I love how you use the term. It's such a good one, especially referencing tech and AI. It's a force multiplier. And I think a lot of agencies are still thinking about AI and tech as a time saver, a productivity booster, but force multiplier is actually probably as important, if not more important. Talk about that just for a second. This idea of taking what you do as a human and doing it better.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been blessed to sit with the ad ops teams for as long as I have. I find them to be some of the most creative and brilliant thinkers out there. I love working with them. But what I have seen is things like a deficit in the amount of time that they have to actually get anything done. It can be a frustrating job. They all have creative ideas. They've all wanted to go explore the next new thing. There was an example where we had gotten all these new audiences in, and the audiences were available to us. There were thousands of them. They all have different names. They're all super interesting names. They're named well enough for us to figure out what they are. And it would make sense for us to activate those audiences. We've been running campaigns on accounts for years, and the job is to maintain them, and we have our ratio set up that way. So to take that break and to go find those audiences that are relevant and then to go re-instrument all of our campaigns, extremely difficult. And what it really lent itself to is just not being activated very much. And
Mm.
that's challenging. So it's not for lack of desire, it's not for lack of creativity or knowledge or know-how. It's for lack of you'd mentioned time, for the opportunity to go do that. So if we have all these things helping us do more with a single button click or doing things in the background, helping us be ready for those next things, we can get the time back. We can get the strategic space to execute that long tail. Google is really good about constantly making another lever to pull. I mean, Meta, same thing, right? Where there's yet another lever that we can pull. That's the next best optimization. And they are all lever pulls. So I mean, I think about how many different levers can we pull contiguously and concurrently and with the same number of people, it's really challenging. But if we can get this force multiplier to help us, it's like having more hands. We can pull more levers with more hands. The team is creative enough and smart enough to know which levers to pull, and they're energetic enough to want to go do the best thing for their clients. It's now just a game of we're overly constrained today, and we'd like to break through that in the future.
Yeah, yeah, great point. We've got one of the questions. This one's coming directly to us. For those, for those of us who are still early stage with this, what workflow do you recommend we begin with? Is there a good starting point?
Yeah, I think first take an inventory of where your time sinks are. Look at those things that are taking a good amount of your time. Experience says that we spend an awful lot of time in justifying what we've done for our clients. So if and I'm not sure what business we're talking about here, it could be a brand or it could be an agency, but say we're in the agency space and we're representing someone and they're asking us, what do you do for me? Like what's the value that you're providing into my advertising? That justification of our existence is it's been there since I've been in the space for 18 years, and it takes a lot of time to go do that. It takes a lot of extra bookkeeping for us to go do. So my first thought is if you find out that you're reporting out to your client of the daily actions that you're taking is heavy, it's not that much different than what you're seeing um, in our like our meet agents that come in that summarize things. putting it allow an agent to monitor what changes you're making on accounts, the optimizations you're doing. Let it do the summarization. Let it do some of the interpretation as to the rationale and to the why, at least as a first pass. Have it there waiting for your client. I think it's really low risk. You can review what it did. It's basically telling your client what changes you've made this month, that you satisfied the customer request that they had, and you've done these optimizations. That can be time consuming just in bookkeeping, especially if you have a portfolio of accounts that you're working with, to remember what on account XYZ, what thing you did last Thursday and why you did it, and to remember to go back in and check to see what it did to performance. So if you can have an agent help you with that, and it's a pretty cool spot to be in. It's relatively low risk. You can always go back to your old process if need be, but that's it. If for any reason it doesn't do what you expect it to do. But that's a great little over your shoulder observer that I found is pretty cool to work with.
Yeah, safer, easier, a good easy step in. We've got another question here. What level of financial investment should be budgeted to start this process? So I guess that question would be based on what you presented. What kind of investment sort of required?
Yeah, that's a great question. And being in this software space, I might have a strange lens on this one. I think if you're going to do this from ground up, it can be pretty expensive. There's an awful lot of things to build. There's this thing called an MCP server. We didn't get into that, but it's effectively ways that you expose API endpoints to make it so that you can interop software. If you have something that already provides those MCP endpoints, you can write a layer on top of that. Um, of what to budget. It's such an open-ended question, and can be so varied by the use case. I think if you were to go ahead and just try to dip your toe in the water, um, I think you can do that on a relatively low budget for proof of life. I think when you want to go to scale, this is where the rubber hits the road, and that's a little bit different. One of the things that I demoed some of the stuff that we do with the retrieval augmented generation. By the way, not a Fluency thing. That's a global thing, retrieval augmented generation. Um, where we can pull if user asks a question, we can pull the data that's relevant to that question and pass it into the context window. I demoed it to a friend of mine that's in the ad op space, and her statement was, I actually do this job, but I do it now by going and manually copying tables of data out of Google, and I paste it into she uses Claude. I paste it into Claude, and then I can ask my question of that. That first thing that she did is a low cost of entry, but it's not a very good high scale thing. It's not a thing that you would do repeatedly. It's not a thing that you would set up to end up in a spot where you're going to have agents running in the background and doing that for scale. So preparing yourself for scale, I would say if you're going to do it yourself, it's very expensive. Testing the waters, very cheap. LLMs are amazing for that. You can actually set up a lot of things. That conversation window that we just talked about there, that's pretty cheap and easy to do. When you get into the automated agentic thing, I would say that if you're going to do it yourself, it's expensive. You partner with somebody that's actually done it and democratized it. It's probably a better use of your time, but make sure it fits your needs. Like that's the most important thing, is make sure it has your tone of voice, your sensitivities, can work with your playbooks, and can be tailored to sound and look like you.
Another question here. Can you speak briefly about how you implemented AI training at your firm? Um, so how have you approached kind of general AI adoption and skills advancement in that?
Well, the first thing to do is to understand so this is actually something I think we're all on this journey together. I'll tell you what we have done so far. We just had a meeting the other day about how to take this next step in the next version of AI and its pervasiveness that's going on right now. So I'll be humble and say, in 8 months ago, I would not have used an AI coding assistant. Today, I love them. They're incredible, and I love to write code. Like it was something I was like, I don't really want to give this up. And I will say that it's extremely helpful to work with an AI coding assistant. Awesome. So these things have become more and more pervasive. There's more and more tools that are out there. There's more and
And
more.
Eric, out of curiosity, what's your favorite? Is it Claude or which is your favorite for code?
Claude Code for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
Um, I used Cursor only lightly, but Claude Code gives me no reason to even look elsewhere. It's so good.
yeah.
Um, so we are evolving this as we go. But when we first started, what we looked at is what is business sensitive data, and what solutions are out there that protect our data? What are what are the data use rights within those tools? And then we came out with a governance that said these are the tools that are approved. We have a paid Gemini subscription that doesn't that ensures no training and no data egress. We use Amazon Bedrock, which is kind of a captive system. Amazon Bedrock gives you access to a lot of different models, but they are captive within Amazon and don't have no data egress. And then we still went through and said these are parts of our business data that we do not want shared even within that space. So key financials, things that we didn't want our team members to accidentally go put into context and give to the LLM. So we went through that. So effectively, a tool governance first, and then a data governance was second. Followed that up once we had those things kind of at least at a cursory step. Our L&D department got involved and started to train our team about the pros and cons of using the LLMs, the risks that are involved. We use curricula for some of our security training, and it's got a great session on LLMs, and it talks about hallucinations and the risks of hallucinations and not reading what it does, or what it puts for output and passing that all directly through. So there's a lot in there as far as making sure that you have a good and safe team that understands this. The reality is the LLMs are meant to interact. You're meant to interact with them like people. It is a chat conversation. You don't have to be a developer. Even what I've noticed over time is even prompt. We think of prompt engineering, and I think it was more important than it previously than it is currently. It's still important, but you'll find, like we did with Google search, you'll learn to ask the questions and pose your context in a way that becomes LLM friendly just from use. It's pretty natural in how we interface with it. So the reality is we just want to make sure we understand what it's good at, what it's not good at. As an example, people still get upset that it gets math wrong. And I don't know if anybody knows, but it's a statistical prediction model. It takes everything that you type in, turns it into tokens, and predicts text like it predicts what the next word is, even math. With math, what they've done recently is they have turned it into that tool and they've made it so it writes Python code behind the scenes and execute Python code. But you're expecting an interpreter to predict and write the right Python code, to pull the data out of your context window, to pass it into these functions right, and to give you the right answer back. And these errors can compound. So you really want to understand what it can and can't do, what it's really good at and what it's not really good at.
We've got a couple more questions here. Is who led the rollout? This is coming from Nicole. Did you have a consultant, a dedicated role? Did you learn while building the plane, so to speak? So, well, maybe just a bit of context to help with that. And actually, Eric, I do want you to take a moment. So actually, maybe just before we answer that question, let me ask you, while we've got you here, given the Fluency platform that has been built, can you tell us, I want you to kind of how does Fluency help agencies? So how can agencies work with you to get a huge jump start on what we looked at here? Because what we looked at were kind of elements of how you've built the platform that you have for agencies.
Certainly those learnings have like bled into where we focus on the platform over time. I tried not to make it about the platform and tried to, I hope I did okay there.
Yeah, no, it was good. No, it was good. Yeah, you were very objective in walking us through how this works and
Cool.
not making it feel salesy to the group. But I want to give you a moment to be salesy. I want you to give a moment
Sure,
to
sure.
so that people totally understand Fluency and what you do.
What I'll say is when we went back to that operating system slide and we talked about all this data that we wrangle, our real job today is we have things that come into our Salesforce or we come into HubSpot. We've got product feeds and inventory, things that we're managing in Excel spreadsheets and Google Sheets and documents. These things come from all over the place and they come over to your AdOps team to go wrangle them all together, interpret them all, and then input them into other systems. We had this problem at the last company. We have it. We see it with all of our partners. The amount of data and the sophistication and the number of settings that you have to make. It's challenging. So we started obviously pre OpenAI getting out there and making ChatGPT such a pervasive thing. We started in late 2017, and we focused heavily on automation. And that automation can take good structured data with rule systems and build that content for you even taking dissimilar data sets, finding join points, pull that all together and just orchestrate your playbooks. Now that I think there's a lot of value in that. And that's kind of an end-to-end function. It's got reporting built in, it's pulling the data together. It's a single seed across all the different ad networks. Those are important things to get right. From that point forward, once the AI world came in, it solves a really big problem that we've had in that automation side. I try not to make it my opinion about how anybody should run their advertising ever. Like I said, I want it to be the personality of the business that we represent that uses the tool, which means it's highly configurable. The playbooks are all yours, but configuring those playbooks can be really tedious. And AI is extremely good at helping us build that. And that's that dovetail of the AI and automation together. So if we can get to the spot where we can express the goal, or even in your existing playbook as a document, feed it in and say, the outcome I need is this, we call it blueprints. Blueprinting is this automation framework that we have that says, take the data that comes in and transform it this way into campaign outcomes. So if we can get our AI to help us configure those blueprints and normalize the data so it's clean on input. I think I've seen 23 different ways you can write the word Yamaha, believe it or not. Um, but if we can get the data normalized and if we can get those rules in place, it becomes a lot easier. So those connection points from data to automation are fuzzy, are kind of rough boundaries. And AI sits in that space and can really help us with a lot of that stuff. And then in the continued optimization, we also build a management tool for manual management. I personally wish that nobody ever had to go in there because that's tedious. I mean, I'm glad that we have the ability for people to do that, but it's pretty tedious to go do. AI can really help you find those spots. There's no needle in the haystack searching anymore, and just help you get to that spot and just make that change really easy. It can even do the change for you if you just hit approve, and that's a nice spot for us to be.
Yeah,
Um,
that's huge.
yeah, I do.
Because you don't have
I
to
am real
get,
proud of it.
yeah, you don't have to get into the weeds and the mental bandwidth and time
For
to
sure.
maybe get an okay decision where now you can make a really smart one because it's being recommended to you.
Yeah, that force multiplier is the key
Yeah,
inside
yeah.
the platform, and it's the governing principle that we have in here is to say I've seen ad ops people that wreck it weekends, they're late at night on Fridays all the time trying to satisfy their customers' needs. It's a challenging job. It's usually a holiday that something has to go up or something has to come down. And we really wanted to just make that force multiplier and get that stuff out of the way and improve the quality of life for the ad ops folks.
Yeah, yeah. Another question here. How can ad ops apply AI at scale across multicultural campaigns without losing cultural nuances?
So this is a space that I think I can answer this with a relatively generic because I haven't tried to do multicultural campaigns personally, but those rule systems are incredibly important to get into context. So if we have delineations, the same things that you would tell your staff, you'd be surprised you can actually inform the context window for these LLMs to have the same sensitivities and awareness of the cultural differences. I assume that this is multinational type advertising.
I think that's what they're referring to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so the LLMs having that context window, knowing the sensitivities, knowing the governance rules that you want to impose, extremely important. And that's where those agentic layers are really valuable, is to say, hey, I'm operating in, and I'll just go, I don't know. We'll go with England, kind of safe. I'm operating in England, and they're sensitive to. They use this type of terminology. They're sensitive to these types of things. They're, et cetera, et cetera. And you can have your agents have the ability to retrieve that data based on other information. Like if you want to say you had a function that was like retrieve rules, and it took a country or a region as the input parameter, the LLMs with that agent loop that we were talking about can go retrieve that situationally, get that information so you don't have this gigantic context of all countries, all things all the time. Just pick out the stuff that you need, pass it into the context window and let it operate.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely it's an interesting question because as campaigns become global in execution, it can get very complicated for an agency very quickly, but AI can play a huge role in not needing people in every market to necessarily be involved in working on this. Eric, thank you. Super interesting session. It's a space that is just moving so dang fast.
So
And
fast.
thank you for giving us some great insight into where it is now, what's coming, how to put it to work. There's a QR code there, folks, so you can get a hold of Eric if you've got further questions. We'll be giving you a link to recording access for the session. And Eric, I think we talked about this. I'm trying to remember. I'm going to put you on the spot. Is it okay if we get you to maybe email a copy of the presentation or an executive version copy of it? I'm
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
okay.
Anybody that wants it can have it, and anybody that wants to follow up with some more questions, it's a lot of content to try to get out quickly. I hope it was valuable for everybody.
Yeah, we were saying it'd be great to do like a 10-part series to really
Yeah.
go into detail on this stuff. Thank you for breaking it all down. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. As a reminder, mirror.com/webinars, you can see our upcoming sessions. We're about to post another group over the next couple of weeks. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. We'll see you back online next